Hello again. Where we're going to be talking about the this time. What was the name of this segment called, Kyle?
Diversity in horror.
Yes, we will be talking about in horror. Where this episode we are dealing with horror films that focus on LGBTQIA, or also known as queer horror themes. And as always, we picked 3 or 4 movies that we really enjoy that we would like to kind of recommend if you haven't seen them. If you have seen them, of course, tell us what you thought. So, I guess I will begin. Um, it's the oldest one on my list, and it's the one I most recently watched, but I'm going with 1971's Daughters of Darkness. Now you can find this on Amazon if you care to watch. It kind of came out during that same time where there were a lot of European companies making the lesbian vampire movies, where this is about a newlywed couple that is traveling in Europe, and they go to this hotel, and a countess and her assistant, which the countess is a vampire, or potentially, but yes, she is. But she goes and she becomes fascinated by this couple and decides she wants them as her next plaything. And of course, the new husband, he's fascinated with death. He's controlling. He's kind of abusive. Not kind of. He is abusive. And yeah, it's very much about a woman's liberation that would have came during that time, and as this kind of wife is really initially the only one that's trying to remain sane in this whole ordeal, and then she kind of breaks free and finds herself, and there's vampire stuff. But if that's what you're into, if you're into the Hammer horror films that kind of were later on, if you're into, again, those kind of exploitation 70s horror that came out of Italy, France, and so on, Spain, I'd say check it out. And it was the costume design and the production design they're very beautiful looking, and I'd recommend it.
Cool. It's on Shudder, right?
I know it's on Amazon. It might be on Shudder too.
Okay, it's available.
Yeah, for free.
For free. I'm not paying.
Yeah.
All right, I'll jump in there. So my first one is Knife Heart, which is a French postmodern giallo, I guess you would say, about a killer who's stalking the cast and crew of a gay porn. And it's all about the gay porn world in like the 70s in France, and it's pretty great. It's pretty hilarious. Like all the meta scenes within the scenes are hilarious, and all the horror stuff is really well done. And it's a typical mystery. It works well, and then you kind of get to the end, and you're like, I don't know if that made sense entirely, but yeah, it was good up to now. Whatever. I don't give a shit. I would recommend it. It's on Shudder still, I think. It might be on Amazon too, probably.
I know it was an exclusive or original Shudder or something. I think.
Yeah, it's definitely on Shudder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I remember being kind of disappointed with the end of that movie. I thought it was great up until that point, and when it was just kind of like, I don't know about that.
It's always like, they're always like trying to have some deep psychological trauma or some weird thing that ties in, but it's I don't know. I feel like they never really set those things up to where you could actually solve the mystery. So it's like this tacked on. I don't know. You're like, okay, I didn't even know this guy had a twin brother or whatever the fuck.
Yeah. Oh, so I'm gonna use probably one of the more well-known ones in the history of horror cinema, which would be A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Freddy's Revenge. Clearly, this doesn't really need a whole lot of introduction since it is known as the gayest horror movie ever made. Stars Mark Patton, who, has since gone on to release the Scream Queen documentary detailing, all the bad shit that occurred over the course of his life solely based on his role in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2. It's funny, to the writer of the movie, David Chaskin is his name. Seems to be, I don't know if willfully ignorant is the right way of saying it, and insists that he in no way set out to make or write a gay nightmare film, which that's pretty outstanding work to not try and have it come out that gay. But
well, then he come on, or then he changed his mind and said that he wanted to make the opposite of basically an anti. Yeah, or like almost. I forgot. I remember the documentary. They talk about it.
No, he came out and said that he was trying to write it as a gay film, like subversively, and he's full of shit, man. Like he definitely wrote it to be a gay film. It just wasn't in vogue to say that back in 1985 or 6.
I mean, I guess if you write a scene in your script with Marshall Bell in bondage and getting, getting fucking towel whipped in the boys' locker room, I don't know. Seems pretty intentional to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do next one, and it'll be, I guess I'll go up the ladder and the oldest to newest. The 2004's Calvaire, The Ordeal. This was done in Belgium, but they speak French, and it is kind of considered part of the new French extremity, even though there's not. It's disturbing, but there's not a lot of like shown violence that French extremity is kind of so famous for. This one deals with basically a singer, a lounge type of cabaret singer who is going to go perform at this other place, and he gets lost and his car breaks down. And he comes across this hotel where eventually the guy kind of captures him and starts to dress him up as his wife who ran away years prior. And then the other people of the town, who are made up of all men, also start seeing this dressed up individual as this woman that that this innkeeper's ex-wife, I guess, if that's the easiest way to say it. And so what pretty much happens is this man is then subject to a lot of torment and psychological distress because of and facing gender identity, as this whole kind of creepy town starts imposing this female role on him. And it's probably one of my favorite New French Extremity films, but it's also one of the hardest ones to find. I know I had to get help from Kyle in actually finding it, because I think they did one of those things where it's like the DVD release when it first came out, but then now, it's all out of print and everything. But I hope they do release it normally, because definitely buy it. And it's disturbing, and it's kind of brings up a lot of great questions, and the performances are kind of out there. That's fun in a not fun way. I don't know. But yeah,
it's great. Yeah, it needs a Blu-ray for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to talk about Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, to go tie in with Josh's, which is the documentary about Mark Patton's life after Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and how it affected his career and you get a lot more backstory about his career and how accomplished his acting career actually was, maybe more than people know, and how kind of poised he was to be a lot, almost maybe, I don't know if it was A-list, but, pretty mainstream big actor, and that the whole controversy regarding Nightmare on Elm Street 2 kind of derailed his career and also his partner getting HIV and everything. But it's I really liked it. I thought it was great.
Yeah,
it's really good. And the whole stuff with obviously we all know about like the AIDS crisis in the 80s, but how it was affecting gay actors and like people, co-stars demanding they get blood tests and the like paranoia and everything regarding it within the industry, I didn't know anything about. So that was pretty interesting.
and they talk about how the late 70s, it was like they were finally free, and then the 80s they had to go right back into the closet type of thing if they wanted to keep working.
Yeah.
And that,
which ties into why the screenwriter obviously definitely wouldn't admit his true intentions back then. It was like it would not have gone over well at the time.
I will say that the director, though, is almost, because the screenwriter, they have, I still recommend watching it even though we're going to spoil it. They have a moment where the screenwriter and Mark Patton, they kind of have this one-on-one. It's not really a great, they don't really reconcile fully. It's kind of half-assed, but there's some common ground that they find a little bit. But the director is just kind of Nightmare on Elm Street 2. He's not really that helpful. Like he basically, even up until this movie, says or claims total deniability, that he didn't realize any of this stuff, and that Mark Patton should just kind of, forgive and kind of forget or let go of it after all these years.
Yeah, he comes off kind of weird. But he does also come off where you're like, I could see this guy being that like dense that he didn't get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating shit. So the next one I'm going to do is Seed of Chucky, which I guess technically you could do pretty much any of the Child's Play, but this one in particular, which everyone seems to hate this movie. I don't necessarily hate it. It's definitely not one of the better ones. But it certainly fits into this topic. Because Chucky and Tiffany have a son, daughter, they're not really sure. Glenn or Glenda, which obviously too is referencing some Ed Wood stuff, which Ed Wood would fit into this category as well. And it's like I said, it's not one of the more liked Chucky movies. So I wanted to talk about it and make sure people don't forget about it. Clearly, like I said before, you could probably use any of them, simply because, Don Mancini is the creator of everything Chucky, but Seed of Chucky definitely fits this category. And I think it's always good to remind people it exists.
No, I think it's one of those ones where I give credit to Don Mancini, because he said he never wanted to tell the same Chucky movie. He always wanted it to be, a different style or whatever. And I don't know I think looking back at it now with kind of fresh eyes or whatever, I think it's one of the most fun out of them. Like, it might not be the best in terms of quality, but I think it's a lot of fun. And it has the John Waters bit, which is great. And
yeah, just out of nowhere, there's John Waters getting his face melted off.
John Waters should be in everything, getting his face melted off. He's awesome. Yeah, I need to rewatch that one. I remember it was okay back in the day, but I feel like I probably would appreciate it more now for being outside the box.
Yeah.
Craig, you're next, right? Sorry, I was
Yes.
about to go. Okay.
Oh, no problem. So my next one is the Swedish version. So I haven't actually seen the other one, so I'll just say Let the Right One In, 2008, which is probably my most. It's a pretty famous movie about a child vampire and a very troubled boy who kind of they find this companionship in one another. And yeah, most horror fans they know this movie, and even non-horror fans, and they ended up doing an American remake. However, in the book and it's hinted at in the Swedish version that the girl vampire was actually originally a boy that was castrated, before she became a vampire. And so, there's this whole other subtext that's brought into it. I know the American remake, it is, very clearly, a little boy and then a little girl. But I think there's a lot of elements that the Swedish version and a lot of tones that it brings to it that, it's kind of one of those things where I think it's hard to translate over to like an American film necessarily if they wanted to make it, famous in a way. But yeah, if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest it because it's a great movie. Not just as a horror movie, not just as whatever, but yeah, just a great kind of twisted coming of age tale. And there's also because on the topic, then there's hints that his father, the boy's father, who he goes to visit, is in a homosexual relationship with the guy that he calls is his friend or roommate type of thing. And yeah, so check it out.
Yeah, I need to watch it. Maybe in another couple years, get around to that one.
I read that book and then saw the film, and that was not a good idea.
Really? I haven't read the book yet. I always
it's magnificent, and okay. That you could never, like, some of the best parts in the book, there's no way you could adapt for film. Okay. It just wouldn't work. So the book is much better.
Okay. I know that there's also a short story sequel to the book. I'm not sure. It was in a collection, I think. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's supposed to show the kids later on. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So my last one is Neon Demon by Nicholas Winding Refn. And it kind of fits. I don't know. It's kind of borderline this category and more like it's like a feminist horror film. But there is that lesbian relationship to be at the core of it. It's just a really weird fucking movie. Like it's big time art house horror movie. Like it doesn't really have. It has a couple graphic moments, and the rest is just only horror, really, because of the atmosphere, which is a good thing. But it's an interesting watch, and it's. I fucking honestly, I just love Keanu Reeves in it because he just plays an asshole so well, and he never, he's clearly a nice guy. He doesn't really get to play the asshole, but he's great.
I thought that was the best part of it, especially like he's just nasty and just a piece of shit, and it's like, dude, that's a stretch for him to,
Yes. And I didn't expect that. Like, I remembered he was in it, and I didn't know what his character would be. And then when I love how it played up like she was looking for the motel owner, and it's all in darkness, and you just hear a voice until he comes out. And I was like, oh shit, that's who Keanu Reeves is going to be in this? Yes. That was great.
Okay, so for my last one, I'm going to do Dress to Kill from Brian De Palma. Dress to Kill is again, one of those that probably doesn't need to be talked about in too great a detail in terms of plot, because if you're listening to this, you're probably well aware. But it obviously borrows real heavily from Giallo Italian stuff, and the killer that we see in the film we think is a woman, but it turns out it's not. It's Michael Caine, dressed as a woman, dressed to kill as a woman. So yeah, I don't really feel like it needs to be talked about in too great a detail, other than using the giallo kind of style, for sure. But De Palma, especially that long ago, was basically hitting it home run every time he made anything. So if you haven't seen Dress to Kill, you should probably see it.
Yeah, you really should. De Palma is just so good visually with some of those sequences of just, there's no fucking dialogue. Goes on a subway platform. There's this person. There's this guy with a boombox. It sets up like everything without anything.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, there's that documentary about him.
Yeah, De Palma.
Yeah, and he kind of talks about how all these movies that are considered his best now, really only Carrie and what was it, Mission Impossible were the only ones that are in Untouchables were the only ones that were ever considered like hits when they came out. Everything else that now are like Blowout or whatever that are considered his best work are just kind of they flew under the radar when they.
Well, Blowout's got a pretty dark ending. That was not. I love that ending, but
yeah, it's a great ending.
I was gonna say though, I got the Blu-ray of Bird with a Crystal Plumage, and I was rewatching that. But there's like one kill in that is totally kind of referenced in Dress to Kill, because the guy's in leather with a razor, and like just the way it's filmed, like from the waist down with the guy slashing and stuff, is like straight up, almost copied in like Dress to Kill.
Well, I have one more that I'll give, and this is 2011's The Skin I Live In. And this is very much inspired by Eyes Without a Face, but taken its own way. The story is about a doctor, a plastic surgeon, who is played by Antonio Banderas, and he's great in it, but he loses his wife after she's horrifically burned, and she sees an image of her own reflection, and she commits suicide. And her daughter sees this and becomes traumatized, and years go by, and the daughter herself is finally, they go to this gala, this fundraiser, this charity thing, and his daughter is kind of finally out in the open, and she meets a man who then basically he seduces her, kisses her, but then he drugs her, and she ends up passing out, and she comes to while they were having sex, and then he rapes her, and she then goes into this catatonic state where she too commits suicide. And now this doctor finds the man who did this and gives him a sex change, and to make him basically the perfect woman, and to both replace his wife, his daughter in a way, and as punishment. Now, a lot of people, when they kind of first hear this, it seems very problematic, but I would say if you just kind of scratch beneath the surface and stay with it, it brings up a lot of great themes in terms of gender identity, where even though this man has been, physically turned into, has the quote unquote perfect woman's body, as the doctor phrases it, that he, even throughout the end, clearly says that he is Vincent, that he is, a male. So it brings up some great questions that I think we are finally just acknowledging now in terms of gender identities. And it's a hard one to find unless you know my Voodoo account, then go ahead and watch it. But yeah, check it out.
Should mention Pedro Almodovar is gay, also, and he's
all of his movies kind of have.
Yeah, they touch on that. I mean, they're all like dealing with a lot of feminine issues that are kind of repressed in Spanish society for sure, and Catholicism and stuff. And all of his movies are great.
Yeah. Okay, well, join us next time as we choose another topic in our diversity and horror. Thank you for listening. As always, I am Craig.
I'm Kyle.
My mic is muted. I'm Josh.
And see you next time.
Bloodhound Pix podcast is produced by Josh Lee, Craig Dram, and Kyle Hintz. Music by Raymond Seed. Audio editing by Kyle Hintz.